I'll give you a line and you repeat. Namo Fundamental Teacher Shakyamuni Buddha.
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 Lumpur Liam, Lumpur Pasano, distinguished Dharma brothers, sisters, Dharma friends, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Heng Sure. Today I'm going to share stories about two men, one a bhikshu, one a bhikkhu, whose vows brought the Dharma from Asia to the West. One is my teacher, the late Master Hua, born in a farming village in Manchuria. At age 19, his mother passed away. He made a vow to spend 3 years by her graveside without leaving. Tradition called filial respect. The other, Ajahn Sumedho, who was born in the West Coast and found himself in Asia studying the Thai forest tradition, and was told by his teacher, the late Lumpur Cha, to take the Dharma to England. Fast forward to 1980, the winter. Our winter Chan meditation retreat. Cold. City of 10,000 Buddhas had been established for 4 years, and it was rough. Midway through the 10 days of meditation, a tall monk wearing Thai forest tradition robes, Theravada robes, walks into the Chan hall and looking rather stern, I must admit. Ajahn Sumedho looked awesome. He came in and sat down like a bell, just boom. And after the sit, Master Hua came over and said, "Do you know who this monk is?" He said, "No, Shifu, don't know." He said, "This is your role model in cultivation. His name is Sumedho," he said. "Take him as your model." He said, "He and I have been fellow cultivators on the path for lifetimes." So, with that somewhat mysterious beginning, I first met Ajahn Sumedho, and clearly there's more here than meets the eye. The reflections I'd like to share today are both community-wide, the two communities of the Thai forest tradition and the Chinese Mahayana, and also personal. And I'll mix the two together. My next encounter with Ajahn Sumedho's community, the disciples of Lumpur Cha, was in 1983, and 5 monks and laymen had been traveling around the world. Myself and my companion Marty Verhoeven, the former Bhikshu Hung Chao, and others. We had just flown from India, stopping in Germany and landing in England, and drove directly to Chithurst Forest Monastery. And jet lagged to the gills and full of fire of this traveling around the world. And we arrived in the evening, and there was this buzz in the community because here were the two monks who had made the pilgrimage from Los Angeles to Ukiah. And there was some interest in, who were these people, the Marines of the Mahayana, they must be. And we came with this reputation. And as soon as we arrived, my head was full of fire, and I hadn't slept in about 24 hours. And we sat down, and immediately I started to nod. And I made a very inauspicious debut with the monks at Chithurst. They thought, who's this guy? He can't even stay awake in meditation. That made a deep impression on me. I think I've never quite lived up to that one after that. So, but in that trip, it was spectacular because we met Ajahn Sumedho in Chithurst, saw the progress of when the Buddha comes to Sussex, right? And met so many luminaries, Ajahn Anando, and met Kittisaro then, who was sick but still kept his vigor up, and on and on. The memories I have to carefully select because there are too many stories to tell. But I met Ajahn Sucitto, and Ajahn Sucitto and I became lifelong Dharma friends. I never let him forget that I'm 2 days older than he is, and 2 years in Vasas, I believe. So I met Ajahn Tiradhammo, and Ajahn Pasano was in Thailand, and Ajahn V was in New Zealand at the time, so didn't meet you then. But that visit was significant because when I returned, we reported to Master Hua about the community that we met, and he asked me what I had learned from Ajahn Sumedho. And I said that I'd learned that the two Vinaya traditions that we observe and pattern our lives after are very similar. So Master Hua said, yes, that's why I've invited him to join us for our next ordination. Now, the significance of that is, if anyone knows the history of Buddhism in Asia, is the Theravada and the Mahayana traditions separated. And there's a number of mutual unfounded stereotypes that the Mahayana monks say, oh, those Theravada monks, they're just all arhats, They don't have the bodhisattva resolve. And the Thai monks go, oh, those Mahayana monks, they're all bankers, They all not only do they touch money, they love money, So the Mahayana monks go, xiao chung, xiao chung. They say, small vehicle, small vehicle, like that, down their nose, And so my experience with the Xiaocheng monks is most of them are over 6 feet tall. So it's this very uncomfortable moment when I have to say, you're small vehicle, you know that? And what are you? So Master Hua said, from now on, he said, we don't say small vehicle, much less Hinayana. What do we say? The southern tradition and the northern tradition. And he said, furthermore, the southern tradition has to learn to stop running to the south, and the northern tradition has to come back from running to the north, and we meet in the middle, which is the Buddha's intent, he said. So, we've had the tradition of shared ordinations at the City of 10,000 Buddhas since then. We're now in our 14th version of that, and to be able to look across when in the Mahayana it's slightly different, the ordination. There's 3 masters and 7 certifiers, they're called, the 10 monks who transmit the precepts on to the next generation. And to be able to look at the bench and see robes of these colors and monks from Vietnam, and monks from Sri Lanka, and monks from China, and monks from America, and Great Britain, and Canada, and some from Tibet, is a wonderful, wonderful vision. So that particular exchange reached its culmination in the year before Master Hua's Nirvana, 1994, I believe, when Ajahn Sumedho was invited by Master Hua to be the Upadhyaya, to be the precept source, the monk in the middle. That has to be a historical first for the Mahayana tradition to receive our precepts led by a Theravada bhikkhu as the Upadhyaya. So these are stories that you wouldn't know if you weren't, I guess, on the inside of the Sangha life, but I think this is the kind of exchange that plants the roots of the Dharma deep down in Western soil without carrying the baggage of the institutions of Buddhism that inevitably grow up after centuries and centuries of custom and cultures. So in America, we set the baggage down and say, let's look past the color of the robes, let's look past the language, the canonical language, or put the colors and the languages together, but focus instead on the cultivation, focus on the precepts, focus on the vows and the practices of those who live into the tradition. So the next stop is several years later, going with Master Hua to Amaravati. And we came in, I forget the day it was some holiday. And we came in just as before the lunch ceremony was going on, very much like today, with all the bhikkhus and the Shiladhara nuns chanting in Pali. And this was the old sala at Amaravati. It's not the nice new one. Very, very tight quarters. And the floor was vibrating, the roof was vibrating, the air was vibrating with the sound of these parita chanting. Very wonderful. Your bones vibrate when everyone's going together. You know that experience, right? We just heard it. And Master Hua said to me, when we go back, we're going to do this too. And we did. Last night at Sudana Center in Ukiah, where we just wrapped up our week-long Shurangama Sutra study session, study retreat, 50 years after the first one, which was in 1968 in San Francisco. Master Hua explained the Shurangama Sutra in 90 days. And 50 years later, we did it again. And the evening chanting last night first did what's called the Meng Shan Shi Shi, the Meng Mountain offering, and then recited the Buddha's name and finished up in Pali with the evening chanting. At the Berkeley Monastery, every other day, we chant our morning chanting in Pali. So there's another bridge across the Pacific and across the centuries and across the traditions. So we are truly a bridge generation. So 1995, the phone rings from Los Angeles. Ajahn, Shifu, do you know how to find Sumedho? I do, Shifu. He said, bring him to Los Angeles. So sure enough, luckily, Ajahn Sumedho was in the U.S., and I said, Venerable Sir, are you free to come down? Master Hua would like to talk to you. And he said, why, yes, I would. He said, ha, ha, ha. So we got in the airplane and Southwest and flew down. And Master Hua was only a few months from his demise. And Master Hua said, I understand you're looking for a home for your monks in America. Well, yes, we are, he said. And we said, well, we have a mountain that needs monks, he said. So that was the beginning of Abhayagiri. And Ajahn Sumedho said, I would be delighted to accept, he Big smile, radiant smile. So that was another moment from these two Dharma friends whose connection apparently spans lifetimes. My next visit into the Thai forest tradition was a visit to New Zealand. And we went to Bodhinyana or Bodhinyana? Bodhinyana. And Ajahn Virdhammo was away, and so he said, our abbot has asked to put you in this kuti. So we went up the mountain, steep mountain, and sure enough, it was Ajahn Virdhammo's kuti, where I was invited to spend the night. And it looks out over this Stokes Valley, and spectacular view! What a wonderful place. And interestingly, we met Anagarika Blue, who had just built a flying fox across the river. He has now gone on to become Bhikkhu Kusalo. He was a wild and woolly Anagarika from the Kiwi. Oh, my goodness. The kids in the summer camp loved him. The next stop was Lumpur Pasano and Ajahn Sucitto inviting me to Khao Yai National Park, along with the Venerable Bhante, who is here also. It was on our... There he is, yes, indeed, yeah. And actually, I was promised by Ajahn Sucitto tigers and elephants. And all we found was tiger scat, it turns out. Not the tiger himself, but they had been there at night and left their traces, And the elephants were apparently down on the other end of the valley. But what a spectacular experience of living the Thai forest tradition. And one of my deepest impressions is we went up to a dry riverbed, and during the rains, it's a roaring river, but when we came, it was dry, and there was a beautiful stone plateau. When it's under the water, you can't tell, but the dry riverbed, had this beautiful shape, and we leapt across the gap and set up a Buddha image and chanted the Pātimokkha, chanted the precepts together at arm's length from memory, under the sky of a Thai national forest. That was a deep memory, how the Dharma can be done. So, since then, there have been many interfaith and intra-faith gatherings where the Buddhist representatives are two monastic traditions. And the strength that comes from looking to my left and seeing Ajahn Sudanto or Ajahn Jotipalo, and knowing, or the bhikkhunis who are here, knowing that amid all the other interfaith friends, here are people who understand the Dhamma Vinaya, the Vinaya Dhamma, and understand the value of commitment to a lifetime of brahmacharya is a deep strength. And I think we can't really overestimate the value of having the Buddha's monastic tradition represented in the 21st century by we, the disciples of these founders who brought the Dharma from Asia to the West. To our amazement, let me step back here. The fact that in our Mahayana tradition, our order always wears our precept sash wherever we go. In China, it is not so. The Chinese drop their precept sash except for ceremonies and for meals. And when we go back to China wearing our robes like this, people go, huh, cultivators, huh? Huh. You know, it's like, uh-huh. Special style, huh? You know, who do you think you are? You know. And our answer is, well, our teacher actually holds up the Theravada tradition as the model because why? They never lost their robe. This is the Buddha's intent. And so he said, this is called the Biqiu Xiang, the mark of a bhikkhu, is the precept that he holds, the sash that he wears. So that's a good answer. You know, we're happy to come back with that. And it is the case that Master Hua said, in the West, monks, the lay people can't tell what a bhikshu is, and if you only wear this Tang Dynasty Chinese robe, there's no particular significance to that. But the precept robe is priceless and very significant. So that's one. But another one of those traditions that Master Hua said, indeed, we will at some point in the future adopt is the alms round. He said there's no doubt that this is the Buddha's intent, that for the lay people to be able to directly support the spiritual practice of a monastic is important, to plant the field of blessings Sangha. And so we said, okay, well, he said, maybe we'll do it first inside the city of 10,000 Buddhas, so people kind of get used to the idea, you know. Just go to a couple lay houses or something. And so, you know, a year later, we're driving through Ukiah and seeing this line of monks with alms bowls walking through the streets of Ukiah. You know, the Thai Forest Sangha beat us to it, you know. There they are. And here are the shopkeepers in Ukiah going, oh, yeah, hey, bread, you do apples? What can we give you, you know? Gas cards? What do you take, you know? iPhones? What do you take? One per bowl, you know. So, and then the Sangha goes, no, we can't accept those iPhones, but we'll take the apples and the bread happily. You know. So I mentioned this to Ajahn Pasano, and I said it's wonderful and somehow ironic, you know, that the Thai forest, we've been in the valley since 1976, Ukiah Valley, and the Thai forest monks arrive, and within a couple of years, they're receiving alms from the lay people in Ukiah. And Ajahn Pasano says, yes, well, you understand that most of those people making the offerings are lay people from the city of 10,000 Buddhas, you know. I think it's time. It's time for that. So, love it. So as Ajahn Pasano mentioned, every Tuesday, the first Tuesday of every month is First Tuesday. And the monks of Abhayagiri come down, and as long as it's not a rains retreat or the winter retreat, and have a tea gathering first, and then do a sit and a talk. And I might add that one Sunday per month, the nuns of Aloka Vihara also come. So we call it nuns doing Dharma, and they're very much a part of the monastic Sangha world, available in the Bay Area. So please tune in. BerkeleyMonastery.org is where you find that news. But we have very much benefited from having the presence of the monks from Fearless Mountain coming to share Dharma every first Tuesday of every month, and watching this community grow, mature, and spread. Three of us, myself and two of my Dharma brothers from City of 10,000 Buddhas, had the opportunity to visit Pacific Hermitage. You all know about Pacific Hermitage, which is Abhayagiri's first branch. Ajahn, the Thai forest tradition's second official monastery. Now there's a third one in Vermont. But White Salmon, right across the Rogue River, is where Ajahn Sudanto Ajahn Kunadhammo and others established the Thai forest tradition by spending the first 2 years going on alms rounds from up on the bluffs, down the cliff face to White Salmon, a walk of one way is an hour?
The whole thing's 4 hours.
4 hours. 4 hours. And the photos of those bhikkhus with their hats pulled down tight and a layer of snow on top of their hats as they came down for their alms round. And at first, nobody knew who they were or what they were doing. But gradually, bit by bit, when we got there a few years later to join in the alms round, we went to all these houses and into the kitchens, and where the kids are jumping around and saying, "Bante, Mom fixed that salad you like. Here it is," you know. And you know, it's bowl, you know, and just bringing the Dharma to the West in the traditional way. So how joyful is that to see this, the bridge generation of those whose roots are planted firmly in the Buddhist traditions of Asia, but the other end of the bridge is now firmly planted in the West, and we go back and forth interpreting these traditions. Fast forward to one night last November, when Ajahn Jotipalo will tell you he heard the air horns and came out and didn't want to wake up and nearly didn't. And then for some reason he got up and opened the door and saw the sky bright red and had to evacuate with 28 members of the community. And the two communities supported each other again. And the stories, for those of you who don't know about that moment, those are that week of uncertainty. Looking over Ajahn Jotipalo's shoulder, he got an satellite feed that was able to do heat readings on top of topographical maps. So you could pick a chunk of forest, and if it's red, the fire is already there. If it's green, it's still alive, still green. And looking at the how often was it updated? Every
24 hours.
Every 24-hour updates, and watching red here, red here, red here, and the circle of green. And we're going, gee, if that's accurate, maybe there's still hope, you know. And coming back, and actually Jin Chuanshi was in the car that first visit with Ajahn Pasano, and having the firefighters, these tough characters, many of them Native Americans from New Mexico and places. These are not men given to airy-fairy speculations and fantasies and stories, right? And they said, you know, we've been fighting fires a long time. We've never seen the woods reject a fire. But your place didn't burn. We saw it, you know. And then the photographs that followed that are on abhayagiri.org, take a look. The fires burn up to the edge and stop. And on this side is burned wood, on this side is green. And if you need any more testimony that the devas and dharma protectors come where people actually turn the dharma wheel and actually cultivate, it's right there in those photos. What a testimony. So brilliant. Just to say, this is indeed Master Hsuan-Hua's centennial year, born in 1918, and someone else was born in 1918, Ajahn Chah, the Venerable Ajahn Chah. So these two traditions come together, and today we're witnessing the dedication of the cloister that did not burn, I might say. And I can only imagine what Lumpur Pasano's thoughts were as he, the fire marshal said, we've been marshaling our trucks in your parking lots, so it's pretty good. So they had a clue that it was safe after those fires that melted glass and metal, and yet seeing it, untouched. The important thing is to, when we come to the Dharma, is to say, what am I capable of? What is my potential? And certainly that was the thought that animated the Prince Siddhartha, as he had been raised in a bubble. That's the story. He had been deluded by had been fooled by his dad into thinking that everything was always young, always fresh, always beautiful. And father made it important that his son not see anything that would trigger his awareness of impermanence. In succession, he saw old age, sickness, and death, and then saw the fourth messenger, who probably looked a lot like the bhikkhus who you see in front of you, or the bhikkhunis. And something lit off in his mind. He had been a champion. He had never been defeated. No matter scholarship, horseback riding, equestrian, archery, wrestling, right? Goodness. He was a champion in all these competitions of skill and strength and learning and gong fu. And yet, he realized nobody had ever beaten mortality. He couldn't accept it. He had a fire in his belly, you could say, that he had to get the answer, can death end? That was the question that motivated him. Over the wall, out of the comfort zone, out of all the promise and the security of the prince coming into his kingship, right? Imagine letting that go. Talk about renunciation. For the promise of what? Absolutely nothing. There was no Buddha. There was no Dharma. There was no Sangha. There were yoga teachers in the forest, each doing their various styles, hanging from a tree branch upside down, standing on one leg forever, or, sleeping on nails or walking on coals, all of which were fruitless external gongfu, until he resolved to discover his mind. They say 49 days under the tree, he saw a bright star and lightened to the way and woke up, became the Buddha. But imagine, if you will, 6 years earlier, before his awakening, that moment when he said, I've got to find out. He was married, he had a child on the way, can you imagine? And he had to go. So Prince Siddhartha had a wife. He loved her like he loved life. She was fine, she was fair, and when he said goodbye, he said to her, Yashodhara, look at where life leads. Yashodhara, that was his wife's name. I'm going to try to get free. Then he had to explain, and she was probably sleeping. I think had she been awake, it would have been a different story. We probably wouldn't be here had she said, you're what? No, you're not. Oh yeah, says who, Think again, sport, that all didn't happen. So she was probably tired after too much partying because they had great parties in the palace. But there he was, whispering to her ear. He said, I took a little trip into town. I learned that death will cut us down. I woke up by the city wall. Freedom to die is no freedom at all. Yashodhara, look at where life leads. Yashodhara, I'm going to try to get free. She had been raised a princess in the palace in very similar circumstances. He said, like you, I never heard an old man sigh. I never knew that people die. Like you, I never heard a sick man moan. Today I learned this body is not my home. Yashodhara, death is haunting me. Yashodhara, love won't set us free. Very controversial line, particularly among Catholics, I might add. So. Then I saw another man who walked in robes with bowl in hand. His gaze looked neither left nor right. His brow was clear. His eyes were bright. I asked him what he did all day. He said, I cultivate the way. I watch my mind. I watch my breath. And in the end, it's birth and death. Yashodhara, I couldn't love you more. Yashodhara, that's why I'm walking out this door. There's the bodhisattva impulse, right? He's cultivating, resolved to cultivate. He didn't want to just die before she did. Most husbands go first, right? Lots of lonely widows, you know. He thought that's too puny an answer. I need to have something better to share with you, my wife. Some will say that I'm a fool. Some will say that I'm too cruel. But this is the best thing I can do. And when I get free, I'll come back for you. And he did. Yashodhara, look at where life leads. Yashodhara, I'm going to try to get free, he said. So here we are on Fearless Mountain, saying goodbye to Ajahn Pasano for just a short time. And he'll be thinking of us in his cave. I hope not. We'll be fine. Meditate. And we'll be thinking of you and all of the lay people who also can try to get free. In that regard, 2018 is no different than 500 BC in terms of the prison bars that we don't let go of, right? It's not so much that we can't walk out, it's that we cling too tightly to the things that keep us not free. So, but this teacher who did, the model of someone who went from human to awakened being, is right there in front of us. So just to share those reflections with you all today.
Sa